something about the blood, which if you consume it, you absorb that quality. Well, that's one of the reasons why Jesus is compared with a lamb. Not a bull or a goat or a fox or an eagle, but a lamb. Because it was humility and sacrifice by which he showed the truth. As you read in the New Testament, the very first mentions of blood, and go through them one at a time, and I was doing that again this week as I have several times, you find clearly that the blood is symbolic of a life. It's a life or death business. If the blood is safe, it's life. If the blood is shed, it's death. Mathew 27:4 is the first mention. And it's Judas who says, I have betrayed innocent blood. What did he mean by that? He's not talking about a red liquid. I have betrayed an innocent life. The Pharisees then say to him, as he comes to them and gives back the money, when he says, I have betrayed innocent blood, the Pharisees say, well, that's your problem. And then they think, what shall we do with the money? Because it is the price of blood. It was the price for the life of Jesus. They paid the money to get Jesus from life to death, to kill him. Pilate is the next, and he speaks at the trial, and he says, I am innocent of the blood of this just man. He says, I am innocent of his life. I am not guilty of taking his life. Then the crowd cries out in response, that's all right. His blood be on us and on our children. What do they mean? They're not thinking of being showered in his blood. They're thinking of the penalty, the guilt of taking his life. It be on us and on our children. In Psalms, verse 30, verse 9, chapter 30, verse 9. If I can find it quickly enough here. Thought I had it. It's all right. Just whistle a tune or something here. I'll be with you in a minute. Psalm 30, verse 9. Would you have it, and somebody have it in the King James Version? I want to get you in the King James Version. The version I have says, what point is there in my death? In my going down to the abyss? Can the dust praise you or proclaim your faithfulness? What do you have, Trudy?
It says, what profit is there in my blood?
What profit is there in my blood? Now, you see, the Hebrew word is blood. But the translators know what David is talking about. He's not saying, what profit is there in my blood? He's saying, what profit is there in my death? If I go down in death to the abyss, can I praise you? There are many ways in which you find in the Old Testament the newer translations taking blood and translating it as life or death, because that's what it always symbolizes. It was literal for the pagans. And in Psalm 16, verse 4, you find that brought out. David refers to those who go after foreign gods. And he says, the sorrows of those who have bartered for another god. This is the New American Standard Translation. I want to give you several. The sorrows of those who have bartered for another god will be multiplied. I will not pour out their drink offerings of blood, nor will I take their names upon my lips. Now, other translations take the first part of that verse and say the sorrows of those who have gone after another god, the sorrows of those who have made offerings to another god. And when you examine the Hebrew, it clearly is talking about the fact that they are making a deal with the other gods. They go after the other gods, by making offerings to the other gods, and the offerings they make are blood. Drink offerings of blood to the gods, because they assumed that their gods needed blood and drank blood. And that was what they did. Now, that's why when Moses talks about sacrifice, he says, never, never, never drink the blood. And pour it out. In Leviticus 17:11, it says, the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I've given it to you upon the altar. And many people quote that because they say, oh yeah, that God wanted the sacrifices. But if you look at verse 10, it gives you the reason for this. And it tells you, never, never, never drink the blood, because the life of the flesh is in the blood. So it's not yours. You may not have it. And David says in Psalm 16:4, what do you have, Trudy? The real Bible there, you got right behind me, Psalm 16:4.
Their sorrows shall be multiplied that hasten after another God.
Their sorrow shall be multiplied that hasten after another God. Other translations say that seek another God. Others that make offerings to another God. And I think the New American Standard is very close, but it says the sorrows of those who have bartered for another God. They have gone for another God. When you go for another God, you have to bring him something. And they would bring drink offerings. And David goes on and says, I will not pour out their drink offerings. In Psalm 68:23, you find something more of the culture which David is talking about. And he's talking about what happens with a hostility, a conflict. And he says, that thy foot may be dipped in the blood of thine enemies. See, this is what they look forward to. You kill your enemy and you wash your feet in his blood. That means he's really dead. You got him down and you're alive. Your foot is in his blood. That was the culture. And the tongue of thy dogs in the same. That your foot is in your enemy's blood and your dogs are licking it. The tongue of your dogs. What does that mean? It's not really anything about blood, is it? It's just that's how you prove that you've got him dead and you're alive and you're big and he's nothing, and that's the way it is. You should listen sometime to the curses that the Arab rulers, even today in their international meetings, hurl at each other. And what they say they're going to do to each other. How we'll drink your blood. And it's very clear that this is something deep in the hatreds of the fallen human nature, the corrupt human nature. But in Psalm 50, verse 13, God is talking to David and says to the people of Israel, says to them through David, do I eat the flesh of bulls? Come on, people. Do I drink the blood of goats? Now, the idea of being washed in the blood and drinking the blood literally is very pagan. The most popular religion in the time of Jesus was Mithraism, and it was particularly strong among soldiers, Roman soldiers. Almost everyone was part of the cult of Mithra. And the cult of Mithra meant that you were washed in the blood of a bull. You got